So, welcome to the second introductory lecture on the environmental biotechnology. In this lecture, we are going to discuss or highlight rather the involvement of microorganisms in environmental biotechnology, importance of microorganisms in environmental biotechnology, and also we will emphasize some components of the global crisis challenges with respect to environmental science and biotechnology, and identify the major contributions of environmental biotechnology in providing solutions towards the global crisis management. Now, as we have already discussed in the first lecture, that the environmental biotechnology is basically relying on the catalytic abilities of microorganisms. So, it utilizes the microorganisms to improve the environmental quality and achieve sustainability. So, during this entire course through this 12 weeks lecture schedule, we are going to have different aspects where we will see that how microorganisms, natural microorganisms which are present in natural environment are going to help us to achieve the goals of environmental biotechnology. Now, the microorganisms are used to improve the environmental quality and achieve sustainability. Now, what are these improvements? These improvements include the prevention of environmental pollution, which is actually, as I mentioned in the first lecture, that it is one of the first and major goal of environmental biotechnology is the remediation of the contaminants or contaminations. So, to prevent the pollutants from causing the damage to the environment, cleaning up of the contaminated environment, and generate the valuable resources for human society. So, as you can see that between these 2 points there is a distinct difference between these two first and second points. The first point is the prevention of environmental pollution. So, any upcoming pollution will be or targeted to be reduced, and the second point deals with the cleaning up of the contaminated environment, that is the existing contaminants or existing contaminations will be handled by different technologies. And the third one is the generation of different resources, which is partly connected to the bioprospecting aspect and the different type of information, different type of materials which are obtained from biological systems in order to achieve the sustainability and the environment friendly technology development. Now, with respect to this environmental biotechnology, we found that there has been a very consistent trend with respect to increasing the focus of this particular subject of environmental biotechnology in achieving or in obtaining solutions of different environmental challenges. Now, in one of the issues of the journal Current Opinion in Biotechnology, the editorial comment was observed, which says that it is not an overstatement that humanity faces some serious environmental challenges in the coming decades, such as curbing the greenhouse gas emissions, finding renewable energy sources, managing waste, and controlling the pollution and diseases. Interestingly, as you can see that this issue of this journal was published in 2007. So, if we try to look into the basic concept behind this environmental biotechnology, which was primarily the wastewater treatment technology. From wastewater treatment technology, there is a very sharp change in its focus. That is the point I want to highlight. That the point is, it is not only the wastewater treatment technology or technologies which are targeted towards only the remediation of the contaminants or the abatement of the pollution, which was principally the major focus of the environmental biotechnology, has remained as the major goal of environmental biotechnology. But in last around 2 decades, we have learned that in order to solve the major environmental challenges, the upcoming challenges, the current challenges, both, we need to understand the importance towards curbing the greenhouse gas emission. So, environmental biotechnology has shifted slightly its focus from only wastewater treatment or pollution abatement towards developing technologies which will help us to reduce the greenhouse gas emission or curbing the greenhouse gas emissions, number 1. Number 2, to find the renewable energy sources. So, how can it be possible that environmental biotechnology is capable of providing new avenues, new technologies by which we can actually offer an alternative towards alternative for the petroleum or the fuel or the fossil fuel based energy resources. Of course, the management of waste and pollution control will remain as the central focus, but the central focus needs to be expanded, because that is ultimately going to be more sustainable, more holistic, will allow us to provide us the technologies to combat the challenges which are prevailing and which are yet to dominate in the later part. Now, if we look at the pollution scenario, if we look at the carbon dioxide level, if we look at the global greenhouse gas emissions, or if we in the world scale, or even if we look at the treated and untreated wastewater discharge from different Indian cities, the situations are very scary, I will say, because the rise in CO2, the rise in the treated and untreated waste, and as you can see with the change in time, the untreated waste which are released in India particularly is increasing very sharply, which of course indicates that there is increasing demand for technologies which can be useful for effective treatment of the different type of wastewater, for example, with respect to the India if we consider. But if we consider the rise in the greenhouse gas emissions, rise in carbon dioxide in particular, there are also very severe rise in the level in carbon dioxide, because the effect of these are catastrophic. The effect of the climate change effect, the greenhouse gas level, the effect of the water pollutants things are devastating, are going to cause huge on our planetary processes in general. Now, if I want to highlight some of the very important issues related to the global crisis and how environmental biotechnology is going to help us to address these global crisis challenges, I think that would set the stage for the subject environmental biotechnology very well. So, before we go into the details of the topics that are going to discuss in the subsequent lectures, I would like to introduce you to some of the basic what I say the drivers for this new science and technology for environmental biotechnology. Now, if we look at the human population, the growth of human population, you can see that from 1960 to 2040, the population is likely to be increased in the following trend. So, from 3 billion in 1960 to 9 billion which is expected in 2040. Now, considering the Earth's system's capacity to supply humanity with indispensable resources and to generate and absorb the waste we are generating, what is the bearing capacity of our planet? So, bearing capacity means how many what is the human population, entire human population on this planet that Earth can actually sustain and sustain in the sense that it can actually allow us to obtain all the indispensable resources like the food, water and shelter, and also to have processes by which the waste materials that we are going to generate eventually will be absorbed. So, what is that bearing capacity of our planet? So, is it 200 million people, or is it 650 million people, or if we have some kind of calculations or some kind of projections, the scientists are able to do that, and it shows that it is to some extent connected to 1.3 planets. So, one Earth may not be sufficient to accommodate all this rising human population, while providing all the human populations with the required resources, indispensable resources and humanity. So, we possibly need more than one planet, considering the resources that we need or believe that we need, and considering the waste that we emit. But as everybody knows that we have only one planet at our disposal. And what is the problem? How it is actually connected, this population growth and waste material generation? Because as we have more number of people of course would require more amount of energy, more amount of food and more amount of water. So, you generate lots of energy. So, that means you burn more fossil fuels, you produce food, and in order to produce more food you possibly adopt some of the agricultural practices which are not very sustainable or not in synergy with natural biogeochemical cycles. That means, you use certain chemicals which are actually toxic to natural microorganisms, or you use certain other chemicals also. Water, you withdraw large amount of the groundwater. At the same time, you actually shift focus from groundwater to different other surface water, and the water cycle is ultimately affected very severely. Similarly, with more people, we need more land to settle down, to do the agricultural activities, for industrial installations, to build airports, roads and other infrastructures. To essentially, more people generate more solid, liquid and gaseous waste. So, one aspect is that when we have more people, we need more resources, energy resources, food resources, water resources, we need land resources, but at the end of the day we consume the resources and also we produce huge amount of waste material, which are all kind of waste, solid, gas, liquid type of waste. And as we generate more amount of waste, we exploit our resources. So, essentially this generation of waste actually put a burden on the natural resources. Ultimately, our agricultural fields are getting contaminated, our groundwater bodies are getting contaminated, and essentially that affects the supply of these essential resources to the people, and that aggravates the supply of the people with the required base of life. If we do not get the water which is potable, which is ready for drinking, you do not need then a treatment technology for those water. But unfortunately, if our groundwater or our surface water like the rivers or lakes are contaminated, then we need to have problems with the treatment of the water. So, for the treatment of water we need to spend more energy for that. So, essentially then these processes are all interconnected, and in addition to that, the crisis is further deepened because of some additional factors. With the increasing population density, destabilization of societies occur, loss of territorial freedom and people are getting more aggressive, and it continues like maternal protectiveness, territorial defense, egoism, and this transcribed to family networks, tribes, economic institutions and political systems ultimately. So, overall we found that the primary problem that we are facing is the rapid increase in the population density, and we have to deal with this crisis immediately. Now, this population density crisis, which is intrinsically connected to climate change, food and water quality and the resources available for that, economy, and ultimately the poverty and social inequality. Now, what are we supposed to do? We are supposed to make attempts to minimize the impacts originating from the densely populated areas and their effects on the life enabling function of the ecosystems. So, from a kind of a overall problem which is there because of the huge population density, or we call it a population density related crisis, we need to work towards developing technologies, developing understanding which will ultimately provide us some solutions, and that will rely on the function of the ecosystem. Now, some more information about this, the population density and the global crisis. So, while we find that the population density is one of the primary crises, there are certain secondary crises. These secondary crises are more complex. These include the climate change related crisis, the water, food, poverty, social inequality and economical crisis. Now, all these sub crises, if we look carefully, are interrelated. Any attempt to solve a single sub crisis cannot lead to a sustainable solution. Like we cannot address the water problem, that all our groundwater must be clean, just the water to be cleaned. We cannot do that without addressing the issues related to climate and food, because maybe our water bodies, our groundwater, surface water bodies may be clean by some technology. But if we do not take a particular technology which is more holistic, our soil may not be clean. So, if our soils are not clean, then the food that will grow, the agricultural crops, those will be grown on those contaminated soils, will be contaminated with some kind of chemicals. Okay. And that is going to be sustainable and effective only when which will actually be connected to the removal of the poverty, and it will actually allow us to reduce our burden on social inequality, and ultimately it should be economical. So, it should have a kind of economical side, whatever technology we are planning to develop. Now, it only might provide us with some time to relax, that is, if we target any particular secondary crisis, climate, water, food, etc. These are not advisable that you address any particular crisis, because any particular crisis, if it is addressed individually, that might provide us with some time to relax or maybe some time to prepare ourselves. But any kind of technology that we actually want to develop should be holistic and should be a multidimensional, inter and transdisciplinary approach, taking into account the local and regional peculiarities and with respect to cultural heritage, religious concerns and tribal traditions. And it is also important that if we start from top to bottom, we are supposed to make any attempt to minimize the impact originating from the densely populated areas and their effects on the life enabling function of the ecosystem. So, ultimately the concept of earth support engineering is developed within this environmental science and biotechnology, which addresses the deliberate, planned and well controlled interventions into the earth system. So, we consider the entire biosphere to preserve the life supporting functions of the system and including all its components such as the lithosphere, the hydrosphere and atmosphere, the biosphere and the anthroposphere. So, all aspects of the planet needs to be considered. Now, what does all this mean for environmental science and biotechnology? It is our duty as scientists and engineers to act as governors of public health and well-being, and we are supposed to develop methods, technologies which will fit into the lifeboat scenario in the future. So, we are aware of the devastations which are just waiting. So, in order in a kind of a meaningful sense that we are ready to have technology, we are ready to develop technologies which will help us to mitigate these challenges, these catastrophic events. Eventually, if we do not take adequate measures, if we do not understand the repercussion or do not understand the consequences of this, the contamination of our environment, contamination of our resources, the reduced volume of the groundwater, surface water, land which are not contaminated with, then we are going to enter into a very bad situation. So, in order to have, we need to develop these methods, and we also need to ensure that there are water in sufficient quantity and quality which are available to the people, industry and agriculture. We need to have soils which are clean, we need to have a atmosphere which is having a reduced amount of the greenhouse gases, and so on. So, environmental biotechnology is developed to address these major challenges which are originally rooted into the population density and which is to some extent unmanageable in this current sense, but we can actually develop technologies to address the secondary crisis. Now, in contrast to this show business, because in contrast to the other different aspects of biotechnology, it is fundamentally rooted in waste in its various form. As I mentioned, that environmental biotechnology is fundamentally focused on or principally focused on the concept of pollution abatement, bioremediation and all such technologies, but it has been understood that it should expand its focus into the developing technologies for mitigating the challenges imposed by the greenhouse gas emissions, switching to the renewable energy resources and protecting our groundwater resources and many other things. So, when we talk the fundamental concept of the environmental biotechnology, which was the pollution abatement technology, which was basically focused on the remediation of the contamination caused by previous use, that is the existing contaminants, impact reduction by current activity, that is the improvement or development or innovations through research, which will provide us new technology that will reduce the impact, maybe the greenhouse gas emission, the use of different type of chemicals, dyes, pesticides and many other things, and of course, the control of the pollution. And the principal aims of these fields is therefore to manufacture products in environmentally harmonious ways, to minimize the effect of the harmful solid, liquid or gaseous output wherever possible, and clean up of the residual effect of earlier human occupation. Now, the means by which this may be achieved, the list that I showed is achieved, is to enhance or optimize the conditions of the existing biological systems to make their activities happen faster or more efficient. Okay. In order to treat the waste, in order to develop the process which will help us to generate technology or innovate technology which will be useful for changing an existing chemical or physical process with a biological process, or to control the pollution in general, we need to actually enhance or optimize the conditions for the biological systems. Resort to some form of alteration to bring about the desired outcome. And if we now look into this the challenges of the 21st century, I think the concept that I am discussing will be more clear, that the super challenges of the 21st centuries are climate change, energy supply, health and disease and sustainable environment. Now, these are all interrelated, as you can understand, and partly these are all connected to the crisis 1, that is the major primary crisis, and then the secondary crises are all connected here. So, the global crisis has actually culminated into the super challenges of the 21st century. Now, these challenges can be addressed or technologies can be developed to mitigate these challenges through environmental biotechnology. If we can develop technologies to improve the treatment of the waste generation, because the amount of waste, water or waste, solid waste which are being generated and the way we are treating them are not sufficient. So, we need to have improved, more efficient treatment processes. Bioremediation technologies, that is the cleaning up of contamination and the phytoremediation processes can be developed, ensuring the health of the environment through biomonitoring. So, improved methods for monitoring the pollutants or the monitoring the biological activities which naturally are able to degrade or convert the pollutants into non-toxic forms, cleaner production, that is manufacturing with less pollution or less raw materials, energy from different biomass, and genetic engineering for environmental protection and control. So, environmental biotechnology is eventually now has, as I also mentioned in my earlier deliberation, is now emerging as a composite but increasingly integrated discipline. It relies on a detailed understanding of microbial biodiversity in both its natural and its anthropogenic content. Now, so detailed understanding of microbial biodiversity, I will discuss in detail that why we suddenly focus more on microbial biodiversity, because microbial processes are the major catalysts within these environmental processes. So, all kind of processes which are connected to water resources, the food, the climate change, the energy are intrinsically connected or dependent on microbial biotransformation abilities. And a better understanding of this microbial diversity actually help us to engineer the large scale systems for environmental quality. And finally, to introduce the innovation and prosperity in human society in all the areas affected by microbial life, from global elemental cycles influencing our climate to the quality and abundance of our food to the health of our gut. Now, why systems of microbial origin? Now, Earth is a microbial planet. Microbes run the world. It's that simple. Now, why it is said so that the microbes run the world? It is because that every processes in our biosphere is touched by the seemingly endless capacity of microbes to transform the world around them. Now, if we look into the evolutionary aspect of these microorganisms, the microorganisms, particularly the bacteria, have evolved around 3.8 billion years ago in this planet, and these microorganisms ever since, that bacteria for examples, ever since they are evolved on our planet, they are colonizing each and every corner of the earth. No matter whether human was able to reach to those habitats, those locations, those environment within the earth, but microbes have reached those or colonized those habitats, even those habitats which are considered to be very extreme conditions. So, it is said that as long as the basic thresholds, basic requirements of life, the temperature limit, the pressure limit and the availability of water, these limits are satisfied, the microbes are going to occupy all environments within these planets. And it is also found that with their diversity of biochemical processes, the prokaryotic microbes like the bacteria and archaea, they supersede the eukaryotic organisms very significantly, as you can see in these graphs, and which is considered to be a silly graph, but it is very illustrative plot that compared to the eukaryotic diversity of biochemical processes, the prokaryotic diversity of processes are huge, and the diversity of environmental tolerance are also very significant. Now, it is not that evolutionarily they are superior, they are occupying almost all corners of this planet for last 3.8 billion years or so. They are biochemically they are more diverse and all these things, but they also remain the dominant driver of biogeochemical processes, and despite the strong anthropogenic influences, because in last 200-300 years since the industrial revolution, we see that lot of changes happen in our climate, particularly the rising climate, the greenhouse gases, the contamination of our water and soil environments. Even after that, the microorganism remain the dominant driver of the biogeochemical cycles, and we will, during this course, we are going to discuss in detail about these processes and particularly highlighting their importance in maintaining the processes and also the homeostasis, and also to identify the processes which will be useful for their application. Particularly these biogeochemical processes which are catalyzed by microorganisms in diverse environments are useful for environmental cleanup. Of course, that is one of the primary goal of the environmental biotechnology. The second is the nutrient availability and biogeochemical processes. So, the biogeochemical cycle, which is the core and the natural process, the microorganisms are doing it for their own survival and metabolism. However, these biogeochemical transformation reactions are helping the contaminants which are anthropogenic contaminants are to be converted into non-toxic forms or forms which are insoluble in water or having less toxic impact, and also making more nutrients available to our plants and then to human and other organisms. So, essentially that is helping the plant productivity, this biogeochemical cycling. The natural biogeochemical cycling is providing more nutrients because the nutrients are also cycled, and also trying to maintain or improve the human and animal health. It is not that they are providing different antibiotics etc., but also they are providing us numerous clues that how to combat different diseases. For example, many of you are possibly aware about the discovery of CRISPR-Cas system. So, all these kind of systems are developed or obtained only because of our exploration into the microbial world, that how microbes basically defend themselves from invading pathogens, invading viruses particularly. So, the knowledge that we gain from different environmental microbes only help us to improve our the plant productivity, our the health for both human and animal health, of course. So, basically it helps us to addresses the issues related to the crisis, that is the secondary crisis that we highlighted earlier. So, in the past 50 years or so, what we have seen that we have continually expanded the use of microbial potential, their biocatalytic abilities, especially in recycling or cleanup of biological and waste materials. The journey of environmental biotechnology is very interesting. As I have already introduced the topic to you through these introductory lectures, and I have identified or I have discussed that the waste treatment technology remained as part of the central focus of this subject in its various forms. But essentially, if we look into the journey, that is the time scale from early days like when we maybe a century ago or more than that, when it was basically the wastewater treatment technology to the current time. So, in this particular slide, I would like to emphasize that what are the topics and developments, some of the major aspects. It is not all inclusive, but it is some of the major things are only presented here. So, as I mentioned that wastewater treatment technology or biotechnology for wastewater treatment, biotechnology for landfill waste management, these were the initial the application or initial topics covered in the environmental biotechnology. Maybe centuries ago, we see that there are technologies or there are processes used to treat wastewater, and gradually we learned how to treat the landfill waste. So, in environmental biotechnology, these were the subject of much interest in early 70s or so, 1970 or so, and gradually then came the bioremediation of groundwater with the help of the United States Department of Energy, where large scale research and developments were carried out to treat the groundwater contamination across the different sites within United States. So, huge research was conducted, and mostly during this research and the research going on in other parts of the world with different contaminated waste materials, three things were considered if we look very carefully. So, one was the microbial interaction with the pollutant. So, with this wastewater treatment initially, although we were not very sure exactly what was the pollutant, because it was considered to be the gross the chemical oxygen demand or the biological oxygen demands, which were essentially the primary targets to reduce the BOD or COD levels. But eventually, with the help of the advanced analytical techniques, we were more careful about the particular type of the pollutant which needs to be degraded. So, within the wastewater, within the solid waste, the scientists or the environmental biotechnologists were more focused on how the microbes are involved with the pollutants. What are the different type of microbe pollutant interactions? During this bioremediation of groundwater program, as I mentioned in earlier, that the US DOE based bioremediation of groundwater, essentially these interaction level studies were highlighted, and it included the different type of ecophysiological, biochemical and the genetic studies of the pollutant degradation, and that eventually also lead to the identification of new microbial strains, new metabolic pathways, and essentially huge development in the microbial ecology has come. The concept of microbial ecology and environmental biotechnology was established as early as maybe 2005, 2007. We see that there is a huge interest among the microbial ecologists, that how the knowledge of microbial ecosystems in environmental biotechnology can be applied. In the meanwhile, enhanced microbial oil recovery and development of new methods for pollutant detection, for the detection of the microbes, microbial processes, microbial biocatalytic events were considered. The topics related to bioenergy was also identified as one of the major areas of environmental biotechnology, as we will also talk about that. The microbial ecology and its developments, the concepts helped us to understand the role of metagenomics and genomics into the environmental biotechnology. And one of the main factors is the outcome of the knowledge that most of the microorganisms, particularly the bacteria present in the environmental systems, are non-cultivable, or that means that we cannot cultivate them, we cannot grow them under the laboratory conditions. So, metagenomics and genomic based technologies allow us to characterize those microorganisms, to understand the entirety of the process, the interactions between the different species, the interactions between the genes and all these things. And from there also new cultivation techniques were also developed, because we realized that many of the, almost more than 90% of the natural microorganisms are not cultivable under laboratory condition, and so new cultivation techniques were targeted or emphasized in order to isolate more bacteria in the laboratory condition, and so that these bacterial strains can be deployed for different environmental biotechnology research. The developments in synthetic biology, the development in systems biology, developments in other aspects of metabolic engineering, etc., also contributed immensely in the current stage of environmental biotechnology, and the concept of valorization of waste, that is also very important. So, as we will discuss, as we will learn through this course of environmental biotechnology, that the waste should not be considered as only waste, that may not be very sustainable, handling or treatment of those waste. The waste, when it is considered as wealth, the entire sustainability and entire the process efficiency goes in a different scale. So, in case of environmental biotechnology, one of the very important outcomes is the fact that the waste, different type of waste materials and their treatment is considered to be is kind of an interesting challenge at the same time, and also is a scope of huge innovation for the scientists working on environmental biotechnology, because thereby we are able to convert the waste material as some kind of resource material to achieve sustainability. So, during this course we are also going to highlight the topics that how this valorization of waste or the chemical transformation or the degradation processes or the bioremediation events can be used or can be targeted towards addressing the issues of the climate change or bioenergy, or making them in general more sustainable. For this part of my lecture, the following references can be used, and in conclusion, the environmental biotechnology utilizes the microorganisms to improve the environmental quality and achieve sustainability. Environmental biotechnology aims to provide solutions towards the challenges of 21st century and helps in global crisis management. And microorganisms and global biogeochemistry, their role in plant and animal health, etc., are also emphasized. Thank you.